In every corner of the world, there are secrets. Stories that have existed beyond understanding, patiently waiting. And we've come to uncover those secrets. To venture into places where darkness never ends. Welcome to Dynamic Dark. Welcome to a brand new horror episode. Welcome to episode 23. I'm Aditya and today, I bring you 3 terrifying haunted stories. New stories. New week. New fear. In our last episode, episode 22, we explored chilling creepypasta horror stories. If you missed it, the link is in the description, make sure to check it out. So, let's begin episode 23. If you are new here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and enable notifications bell if you dare to see what comes next. Today, we'll explore 3 haunted stories, each terrifying in its own way. The first story is The Vanishing Roommate. The second story is The Elevator Game. And the third story is The Forgotten Village. If you love horror like this, then you are in the right place. Because only on Dynamic Dark will you experience creepypasta-style horror blended with real psychological and haunted elements. For the best experience, put on your earphones or headset. Let the darkness, the suspense, and the fear consume you. Now let's begin today's first story, The Vanishing Roommate. It was past midnight, and the hostel lay silent, wrapped in darkness. The only sound was the faint creak of the ceiling fan, spinning slowly above me. Shadows twisted unnaturally across the walls, and the air felt heavier with every breath I took. Something about the room felt wrong. I glanced at the empty bed opposite mine, expecting my roommate, but the sheets were untouched, as if no one had slept there for days, yet I could feel a presence. I told myself it was just imagination, but the shadows stretched too long, curling like black smoke, and the corners seemed darker than they should be. My heartbeat thundered in my ears as I noticed subtle movements, the ceiling fan's shadow flickering strangely, and the faint outline of a black, ghostly figure standing just beyond the light. The room felt alive, watching me, patient and cold. A whisper brushed past my ear, soft but deliberate, calling my name. I spun around, and the room appeared empty, yet the feeling of being observed pressed in from all sides. Shadows pulled near the walls, curling toward my feet like tendrils, and the faint outline of another figure shimmered in the corner, blacker than the darkness itself. I wanted to move, to check the bed, to call out, but my body refused, frozen in fear. The faint creak of the fan slowed, and the whispers grew louder, echoing from every corner. The black figures shifted, stretching, twisting, watching, waiting. My breath came out in visible puffs, and the cold seemed to seep into my bones. Every object, my bag, my chair, my desk, vibrated subtly, as if the presence of the room itself was alive. I realized then. I was not alone, and whatever had arrived had already noticed me. I sat frozen, staring at the empty bed, every hair on my body standing on end. The shadows moved like liquid darkness, black spirits crawling along the walls, around the furniture, closer to me with each passing second. I knew, deep down, this night was only the beginning. Something had entered the room, and it was patient, hungry, and waiting. I glanced at my roommate. He lay there, seemingly asleep, his chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. I shook my head, trying to dismiss the shiver crawling up my spine. Yet, the shadows on the wall seemed to flicker with life, as if watching me. My eyes darted across the room, and there they were, large black ghosts, floating silently, their red eyes piercing the darkness, hovering near the corners and ceiling. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe properly, every instinct screaming to run, but my body was frozen. One of the ghosts drifted closer, floating above the empty space by my desk, its jagged shape pulsating with unnatural energy. The red eyes stared directly at me, unwavering, glowing like embers in the dark. I blinked and it was gone. I blinked again, and now two of them hovered near the bed, stretching their shadowy forms toward the ceiling, merging and splitting in a way that made my stomach twist. Whispers surrounded me, soft and deliberate, calling my name, and I felt as if the room itself had become alive with their presence. I tried to tell myself it was imagination, but their movement was too deliberate, too unnatural. They floated around the furniture, corners, and even above my head, casting massive, ominous silhouettes on the walls. Every flicker of the fan made their shadows twist and jerk, forming grotesque shapes that seemed ready to leap out at me. My roommate remained still, oblivious, or perhaps under their control. The red eyes glowed intermittently, disappearing into shadows and then reappearing closer, more threatening. The room felt like it was shrinking around me. Fog crept along the floor, curling around my feet, responding to the presence of these black entities. Each heartbeat was deafening as I realized, whatever haunted this place, it wasn't just here to scare me. It was observing, learning, waiting. I could see their forms floating near the ceiling now, stretching vast across the room, their glowing eyes locked on me, daring me to move, daring me to speak. I sunk to the floor, paralyzed, every hair on my body standing on end. The whispers intensified, now a chorus echoing from every corner, from behind furniture, from the ceiling. The black ghosts twisted and floated, red eyes blinking like cruel warnings. And I knew, with a sinking dread, that the night had just begun, and I was trapped in their domain. Morning came, but unease followed me like a shadow. During roll call, the warden called my name, his eyes wide, voice trembling slightly. There was a tension in the air, a subtle dread that made my stomach knot. And then, the words hit me like ice, "Your roommate hasn't been here for nights, he's gone." I felt my chest tighten, a cold shiver crawling down my spine. My eyes instinctively scanned the room, and I saw them again, large black ghosts with glowing red eyes, lingering in the corners, floating above desks, and clinging to shadows as if waiting for me. Their presence was undeniable, looming over everyone silently, yet I was the only one who could see them. The red eyes pierced through the morning light filtering in, flickering and darting across the walls. Some hovered above the empty bed, some stretched across the ceiling, massive forms twisting and writhing unnaturally. Whispers carried across the hall, soft, sinister, repeating my name over and over, sending tremors through my body. I wanted to turn away, to ignore them, but my gaze kept snapping back, drawn by their terrifying intensity. Every movement in the room felt magnified, the rustle of papers, the creak of chairs, the footsteps of other students, but I could feel the black ghosts floating, observing, their red eyes following my every step. My heart raced as I realized they weren't just shadows anymore, they were alive, stretching, merging, and splitting, forming grotesque shapes that seemed ready to envelop me. The fog of unease thickened, curling around my feet, my legs felt heavy, yet I couldn't escape their gaze. I clenched my fists, trying to steady my breathing, but the red eyes multiplied, now floating along the ceiling, corners, and walls, each gaze more menacing than the last. The whispers grew louder, a chorus of distant voices layered over each other, echoing through the hall. And in that moment, I understood, the morning light didn't chase away the horror. It had only unveiled the true scale of their presence. I was still trapped, still hunted, and the ghosts weren't done with me yet. Roll call ended, but my sense of dread remained. Every movement, every glance around the room reminded me they were everywhere, massive, powerful, with red eyes burning like coals. And deep down, I knew this day would stretch endlessly, with the black ghosts shadowing my every step, and that whatever haunted this place had claimed me as their prey. Your roommate, the warden whispered, his lips barely moving, died last night in a train accident. I felt my world collapse, my heart racing, my mind refusing to process the words. But I had seen him only hours ago, alive, lying in that very bed. My mind scrambled for answers, but the room offered none. And then, I saw them again, large black ghosts with glowing red eyes, hovering ominously near the corners, stretching across the ceiling, filling every empty space with their oppressive presence. I froze. My roommate's bed was empty now, yet I could still see faint impressions of him, as if the ghosts themselves were replaying the memory, mocking me. The red eyes glared, pulsating in rhythm with my panicked heartbeat. Shadows twisted unnaturally along the walls, and I felt the cold weight of their gaze pressing down on me. Every whisper, every subtle creak, every flicker of light seemed amplified, orchestrated by these malevolent entities. I tried to speak, to shout, but no sound escaped. The black ghosts floated closer, massive forms bending and twisting in impossible ways, some merging into a single monstrous silhouette, others stretching along the ceiling and walls. Their red eyes blinked in unison, locking onto mine, sending waves of icy dread through my body. The fog along the floor thickened, swirling around my feet, responding to their presence, making the room feel alive and malicious. Time seemed to stretch, each second an eternity as I sat paralyzed, watching them drift and float, whispering my name in countless distorted voices. The warden's words echoed in my mind, clashing with what I had seen just hours ago. And I realized this wasn't a simple haunting. The black ghosts weren't just spirits, they were collectors, observers, feeding on confusion, fear, and the impossible truth I now faced. I sunk to the floor, trembling, every hair standing on end, heart pounding like a drum. The red eyes multiplied, floating through the hall, crawling across walls, stretching across the ceiling, an endless, oppressive presence. And deep down, I knew one thing. I wasn't alone, and the night, the room, and whatever haunted it had claimed a part of me forever. Panic set in. I ran back to the room, each step echoing loudly in the empty corridor. The familiar creak of the floorboards felt ominous, the walls closing in. And then, I saw it. The bed. Empty. Cold. Untouched. My mind screamed in confusion, how could this be? The lingering presence of the black ghosts with glowing red eyes intensified, their massive forms hovering silently near the corners, the ceiling, and along the walls, as if anticipating my reaction. I stumbled forward, heart pounding, eyes darting across the room. The shadows moved unnaturally, twisting, merging, and stretching in grotesque shapes. The red eyes blinked intermittently, appearing closer, then further away, watching my every move. The fog on the floor swirled violently, curling around my feet, restricting my motion, keeping me trapped in their domain. Whispers carried through the room, soft but chilling, repeating my own name in layered, distorted tones that made my ears ring and stomach churn. I tried to rationalize, to remind myself it was impossible, but their presence was undeniable. The black ghosts floated around the furniture, bending in impossible angels, stretching over the bed, ceiling, and walls. I could feel their gaze drilling into me, a weight pressing down, suffocating me with fear. Each flicker of the fan, each minor movement cast monstrous shadows, creating illusions of countless more entities, all with red eyes that burned like coals in the dark. I sunk to my knees, every muscle tense, every breath shallow. The empty bed seemed to mock me, a void where reality twisted into nightmare. The black ghosts hovered closer, their forms merging into a monstrous silhouette, pulsating with malevolent energy. Their whispers intensified, now a chorus echoing through the room, through the ceiling, and through the walls, as if the building itself were alive, feeding on my terror. I realized the truth, my roommate was gone, but something else, something far darker, had claimed the room and me as its prey. Frozen in terror, I stared at the bed, the floor, the ceiling, and the shadows all around, knowing with sinking dread that nothing would ever be the same again. The black ghosts with their red eyes had won this encounter, leaving me alone with a fear that would linger, whispering through every creak, every shadow, every flicker of light in the room. And in the silence, I felt it, a presence. Watching. Waiting. I wasn't alone. The shadows seemed to stretch toward me, almost forming a shape, a figure, my roommate, or something that wore his face. Every instinct screamed for me to run, yet my legs felt heavy, trapped by an unseen force. The black ghosts with glowing red eyes floated around me, massive and menacing, stretching across the walls, ceiling, and floor, their presence suffocating, their whispers echoing inside my skull. The figure of my roommate, or the thing that wore his face, moved unnaturally, merging with the shadows, its eyes a twisted reflection of the red glow that surrounded the ghosts. Every flicker of light made it morph, vanish, and reappear closer, closer, until I could feel its breath, cold and malicious, on my skin. The whispers grew louder, now a chorus of distorted voices, calling my name, laughing, mocking, taunting me as the black ghosts floated and twisted, surrounding me completely. I turned to flee, stumbling backward, crashing into furniture, the room warping under the oppressive weight of the supernatural. Fog curled and twisted at my feet, the shadows stretching unnaturally, pulsing with life. The red eyes of the ghosts blinked in and out, a rhythmic pulse synchronized with my pounding heart, each blink revealing new horrors, faces, forms, movements impossible in reality. My mind screamed in terror, trying to comprehend what was happening, but it was futile. The darkness had claimed the room and me. I bolted toward the door, the figure following, the shadows reaching, the red eyes burning into my vision. I slammed the door, but the presence lingered, pressing through, whispering, a part of me trapped in that room forever. And as I ran down the corridor, I knew with horrifying certainty, some things never really leave. They wait, they watch, and one day they might come for you. The black ghosts hovered silently, massive, omnipresent, red eyes glowing as if satisfied. The room returned to a semblance of normalcy, yet the dread lingered, etched deep into my mind. I realized the truth. I had survived, but the horror of that night, the vanishing roommate, and the relentless black shadows would haunt me forever. Today's second story is The Elevator Game. She had read about it online, a mysterious ritual called the elevator game. The instructions were simple, but the warnings were chilling. Step into an elevator alone, press the floors in a specific sequence, and something beyond this world would appear. She felt a shiver crawl up her spine as she scrolled through forums filled with accounts of people who had tried it. Some had vanished, others had seen shadows that shouldn't exist, faces that weren't human. Her curiosity battled her fear, gnawing at her mind. The elevator in her apartment building had always seemed ordinary, mundane, until now. The thought of stepping into it alone made her heart race, each beat echoing in her ears. She imagined the floors lighting up one by one, the hum of machinery mingling with something unnatural. Some claimed the ritual worked only in silence, others said that even a whisper could draw the attention of what lurked in the higher floors. But the lure of the unknown was irresistible. As she rehearsed the steps in her mind, her apartment seemed to grow colder, shadows stretching along the walls unnaturally. She could almost sense the presence of something waiting, patient, observing, black and red-eyed, hidden just beyond perception. The air felt heavier, and every sound, her own breathing, the hum of the fridge, was amplified. She knew the warnings were real, yet she couldn't stop herself. She had to try. Her hand hovered over the elevator button, trembling, her mind racing through every forum post, every anecdote, every chilling warning. Some had returned changed, others had never returned at all. The black shadows seemed to crawl along the edges of her vision, their red eyes glowing faintly as if aware of her thoughts, her fear, her intent. She pressed the button, and the elevator doors slid open with a metallic groan that sounded almost alive. It was time. The game had begun. Her hands trembled as she pressed the first button. The elevator gave a low hum, but it wasn't the normal kind. It sounded alive, almost like a deep growl vibrating through the walls. The lift shuddered, stopped midway, and for a moment there was absolute silence. Then flicker. The overhead light burst violently, plunging the cabin into short bursts of darkness. Each time the light blinked back, she swore the elevator seemed smaller. The mirrored walls warped her reflection, bending her face into grotesque shapes that didn't look like her anymore. And then the temperature dropped. A chill ran through her bones, her breath fogging the glass. She hugged herself, whispering that it was just in her head. Just a trick. Just electricity. But then came the sound, so faint, she almost thought she imagined it. Breathing. Slow, steady breathing. Not hers. Her eyes darted to the corners of the cabin. Nothing. She looked back at her reflection, except this time, her reflection didn't move. It just stared, lips curled in something that was almost a smile. Her stomach turned. She shut her eyes, praying when she opened them, the nightmare would fade. But the elevator lurched violently, sending her stumbling against the wall. The doors rattled, the panel lights blinked, and that same icy draft swept across her ankles again. She wasn't alone. Something was inside with her. The elevator rattled as it climbed, the grinding of gears echoing in her ears. Each number that flashed on the display felt heavier than the last. 4th floor, 5th floor, 6th floor. She counted each one under her breath, trying to convince herself that nothing was wrong, that she was still in the safety of her building. But then, the elevator slowed. Her heart stuttered. It shouldn't be stopping yet. The hum of the machinery dropped into a low growl, like the building itself was groaning in protest. The panel above her flickered violently, numbers glitching between 7, 8, 9, then settling on a glowing red 10. Her stomach dropped. Her building only had 9 floors. She felt her knees weaken as the elevator shuddered to a stop. The silence that followed was suffocating. She pressed the buttons in panic, closed door, ground floor, any number at all. Nothing responded. The light of the buttons seemed dim, like the elevator itself had grown tired. And then the bell chimed. The doors creaked open with a metallic wail that echoed like a scream. What she saw made her breath catch in her throat. A hallway stretched before her, impossibly long, impossibly wrong. The ceiling was far too high, the walls unnaturally close, almost bending inward as if the entire space was being squeezed. Dim, flickering lights buzzed overhead, but they didn't fully banish the darkness. Shadows clung to the walls like living things, twitching and stretching in unnatural patterns. She didn't step out. She didn't even lean forward. Every instinct screamed, "Don't move." But her eyes betrayed her, scanning the hallway. Far in the distance, a pale light pulsed faintly, and with it came a sound. A soft, deliberate echo. Footsteps. Her throat closed up. Someone was walking toward her. She stumbled back, clutching the railing. The elevator display above her head flickered again, the glowing 10 glitching and dissolving. For a second the screen went black, and then, in jagged, blood-red letters, a single word appeared, "Welcome." The footsteps grew louder. The shadows stretched farther into the elevator, creeping across the floor like black vines. And then she saw it. A figure. Tall. Unnaturally tall. Its outline warped in the flickering light, its head nearly scraping the too-high ceiling. Two eyes burned in the dark, red, unblinking, staring straight at her. Her entire body trembled. She wanted to scream, to close the doors, to do anything. But her voice failed. Her fingers were frozen. The thing in the hallway tilted its head slowly, unnaturally, as though studying her. And the elevator doors refused to close. There she saw it, not just a figure, but the outline of a woman. Her body was unnaturally still, as though frozen in time. Her face was pale, drained of all color, except for her eyes glowing, blood-red, burning like embers in the dark. The woman's head tilted slightly, and with a voice so faint it felt like it slithered directly into her ears, she whispered, "You shouldn't be here." Every muscle in her body went rigid. The sound wasn't loud, but it carried a weight, a command, a warning. It wasn't just words, it was as if the very building was speaking through her. The woman didn't move closer, but the shadows around her shifted, curling along the walls like smoke, stretching into the elevator, reaching toward the girl's feet. Her breathing grew sharp, shallow. The air was freezing now, each exhale leaving mist in front of her lips. She tried to look away, to glance at the buttons, to slam the closed door again, but her gaze was locked, trapped, as though the woman's burning red eyes were holding her captive. The figure's lips parted again. The whisper grew louder, angrier, "You do not belong." The fluorescent lights above buzzed violently, one by one bursting and flickering out until only the dim, unnatural glow of those eyes lit the hallway. The shadows now writhed like a sea of black tendrils, crawling closer and closer, licking at the edges of the elevator floor. Her instincts screamed at her to run. But how could she? There was nowhere to go. The elevator refused to close, and stepping out meant walking directly into that nightmare. She clutched the railing, heart hammering, mind screaming prayers she didn't believe in. And then, the woman took her first step. It was slow, deliberate, a heel clicking against the warped floor, the sound echoing unnaturally long, as if the hallway stretched into infinity. With every step, the shadows surged forward, spilling into the elevator like black smoke. The girl's vision blurred with tears of terror. Her legs felt weak, her body trembling uncontrollably. She reached desperately at the buttons again, slamming her palm against every single one. Nothing. And then, just as the woman drew close enough for the burning red of her eyes to light up the entire elevator, she leaned forward. Her voice dropped to a whisper, softer than a breath, but sharp enough to carve eyes into her soul. You should never have come. Her hands trembled as she slammed the elevator buttons, one after another, desperate to leave. The hum of the machine grew louder, twisting into something unnatural, almost like a ground. The doors began to close, but just before they shut, she saw it. The woman with glowing red eyes, still standing in the hallway, unmoving. Yet the shadows writhed, stretching toward her, slipping between the cracks. She stumbled back, pressing against the wall as the doors sealed shut with a metallic clang. But the relief never came. Because the shadows were already inside. They crawled across the walls, writhing, twisting, taking on human shapes. Dozens of faces pressed out of the darkness, hollow-eyed, screaming silently, clawing to break free. Her heart pounded as the elevator jerked violently, the numbers on the panel spinning past floors that didn't exist. 12, 15, 18, her building only had 9. And then she saw it, her reflection in the mirror. But it wasn't her. It smiled back, pale and hollow, its eyes bleeding black. She screamed, slamming the buttons again. The elevator lurched. The doors cracked open for a second, revealing a long, endless hallway lined with shadowed faces. And at the far end, the woman waited. Eyes glowing. Smiling. The doors shut. And the elevator kept falling. When she finally stumbled out of the elevator, her legs shaking, the hallway seemed normal. The fluorescent lights flickered once, then stabilized. The walls were plain, the floor familiar. Relief surged through her chest, she had survived. She told herself it was over. Just a hallucination. A nightmare caused by fear and adrenaline. She tried to laugh it off, but the echo of footsteps and that whisper still lingered in her ears. That night, lying in bed, sleep refused her. Every shadow in her room seemed too deep, too still. The corners of the room weren't quite right. And then, she saw them. Shadows, tall and twisting, stretching from the walls. They didn't move like normal shadows, they lingered, breathing. A pair of glowing red eyes emerged from one corner, staring directly at her. Her heart froze. She blinked. They didn't vanish. The shadows seemed to pulse, slowly creeping closer, as if testing the limits of her courage. Every breath she took felt heavy, thick, almost like the darkness itself was suffocating her. She tried to scream, but her voice caught in her throat. The red-eyed figure didn't move, yet she knew it was watching, waiting. Always watching. And she realized, some things don't leave, even when you think you are safe. Some things follow. Some things wait for the next step. Today's final story is The Forgotten Village. He had always loved exploring abandoned places, old ruins, derelict buildings, forgotten temples. But nothing had prepared him for this. Deep in the jungle, hidden from the world, lay a village long forgotten. The moment he stepped into it, the air changed, thick, heavy, almost tangible. Every breath felt like it carried whispers, though the trees around him were silent. The pathway leading into the village was overgrown, vines curling like fingers across the ground, roots twisting unnaturally. Each step he took seemed louder than it should have been, echoing across empty, collapsed huts. The houses, made of wood and clay, leaned at odd angles. Windows stared at him like dark, hollow eyes. Doors were half open, creaking as if pushed by invisible hands. The wind, if it could even be called that, whispered secrets, brushing against his neck, tugging at his clothes. Something in the air told him he wasn't alone. He tried to dismiss it as imagination, but the feeling intensified with every step. Shadows stretched where they shouldn't, shifting with movement that didn't belong to him. And then he saw it, a figure, barely visible, standing at the edge of the village. Black as smoke, eyes glowing red, staring, watching, waiting. He froze. The figure didn't move, yet he felt its gaze pierce his mind. He realized that every step further into the village pulled him deeper into its secrets, secrets that had been left to rot, unseen, unheard, until now. The village was eerily quiet. Not a sound of animals, not a whisper of wind, only the faint groan of the old wooden huts. Windows stared like empty eyes, doors creaked as if moved by invisible hands. In one hut, he noticed a diary lying on a rickety table. Dust covered its leather cover, and the pages seemed almost alive, trembling faintly under the dim sunlight filtering through broken windows. The air around it felt colder, heavier, like the diary was waiting for him to read it, to uncover the secrets that had been buried for decades. The diary read, "Whoever reads this will never leave." He laughed nervously, but a chill ran down his spine. The shadows in the hut seemed to twitch and stretch toward him. Something moved in the corner of his eye, quick, dark, almost alive. When he looked directly, nothing was there. Yet the feeling of being watched pressed down, heavy and inescapable. As he explored further, he noticed footprints, not his own. They appeared and vanished mysteriously, leading into houses long abandoned. The air grew colder, almost biting, and faint whispers rose around him. Soft voices called his name, echoing through empty huts. Shadows twisted unnaturally, black ghostly figures slipping between the trees and ruins, their glowing red eyes watching every move he made. Suddenly, the air thickened. A shadow detached from a wall, slowly taking shape. Faces appeared in the walls, staring silently. A cold hand brushed his shoulder, though nothing was there. Panic surged, his heart hammering, as black ghostly figures with glowing red eyes shifted in the corners, watching, waiting. He ran, heart hammering, but the village seemed endless, paths twisting unnaturally. When he finally escaped into the jungle, the whispers followed him, echoing in the darkness. That night, lying in bed, the shadows returned. Faint black figures stretched across the corners, red eyes glinting, watching, waiting, as if the village had never let him go. That was the end of episode 23 of Dynamic Dark. If you enjoyed these terrifying stories, make sure to comment below which story scared you the most. The best comment will be pinned by me, Aditya. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and enable notifications bell if you dare to see what comes next. And share with your friends and family too. Or you can suggest a topic for the next episode, like a foreign urban legend, haunted place, or any other creepy horror story. The suggestion with the most likes might be featured in the next episode. Until then, keep listening to terrifying stories, because we'll be back soon with episode 24. And in the next episode, we'll bring you Indian urban legend horror stories. Yes, an Hindi episode this time. Stay tuned and keep watching the horror episodes of Dynamic Dark. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a new horror episode. New fears, new darkness, and new secrets. Join the dynamic Dark family with 3 brand new terrifying stories.